The afternoon rain smeared the windows of the regional office of Summit Trust, casting long, dreary shadows across the carpeted floor. Nolan Fletcher, 48 years old, and a veteran senior commercial accounts manager, sat at his desk, reviewing the latest quarterly growth charts. For 11 years, he had poured his life into this company. He had sacrificed countless weekends, worked 60-hour weeks, and postponed vacations just to keep the regional business accounts thriving. Nolan was a man of quiet dedication, believing that local middle-market companies were the true backbone of the bank's success. He took pride in knowing the names of the small business owners, understanding their struggles, and helping them secure the credit they needed to survive. Across the glass partition sat Dominic Thorne, the newly appointed regional director. Dominic was a younger executive who wore expensive suits, carried himself with an insufferable air of superiority, and cared only about high-net-worth individuals. He viewed the middle market as a waste of corporate resources and had spent the last 12 months dismantling the community programs that Nolan had built. Dominic was convinced that the future lay in chasing wealthy venture capitalists and tech conglomerates, ignoring the steady, loyal revenue generated by local merchants. The tension between them had reached a boiling point during the quarterly review meeting the previous week. In front of the entire executive committee, Dominic had presented a flashy slide deck detailing his plan to abandon middle-market lending. Nolan, armed with years of data and historical projections, had stood up and politely but thoroughly dismantled Dominic's strategy. He showed that Dominic's projections were based on inflated market assumptions and that cutting off local merchants would alienate the bank's most stable customer base. Dominic had sat in silence, his face turning a dark shade of red, as the executive committee agreed with Nolan and ordered a rewrite of the quarterly plan. Nolan knew there would be consequences, but he had not expected the sheer pettiness of Dominic's retaliation. Now, Dominic stood at the corner of Nolan's desk, holding a set of transfer papers. A cold, smug smile played on his lips as he tossed the documents onto Nolan's neat workspace. "Effective Monday, you are relocating to the West Branch," Dominic announced, his voice carrying clearly over the low hum of the office cubicles. Nolan looked down at the papers and his chest tightened. The West Branch was notorious within the company. It was a dying, understaffed office located in a declining suburb, a corporate black hole where careers went to die. "That location is scheduled to close in 40 days, Nolan said, keeping his voice even despite the anger rising in his throat. "Customers have already been notified. The equipment is scheduled for liquidation." "This is not a transfer, Dominic. It is a termination." Dominic leaned down, placing his hands on the edge of the desk, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Think of it as a unique opportunity to expand your portfolio and assist with an orderly transition. The decision is final and non-negotiable. I have already copied human resources. Enjoy your weekend, Nolan." With that, Dominic turned and walked away, his polished leather shoes clicking loudly on the hard floor. When Monday morning arrived, the sun was bright, but the warmth felt completely disconnected from the reality of Nolan's situation. The West Branch was located in a faded strip mall, wedged between a vacant storefront and a discount footwear retailer. The sign above the door had letters that were cracked and missing half their blue paint. Inside, the carpet was worn down to the bare threads in high-traffic areas, and the desktop computers were bulky, outdated models from the early 2000s. The air smelled of stale coffee and old paper. 5 employees looked up as Nolan entered, carrying a single cardboard box containing his personal belongings. Their faces were a mix of fatigue and quiet resignation. They already knew their jobs were ending in 40 days, and they had spent the last week slowly packing files into storage bins. "I am Nolan Fletcher," he said, setting his box down on a counter. "I am your new manager." A woman with silver-streaked hair and tired but sharp eyes stepped forward, holding a clipboard. "I am Sylvia Croft, the assistant branch manager. We have been here for 20 years, Nolan. To be honest, we did not think headquarters would bother sending anyone for our last month. There is nothing here but exit surveys and angry letters from customers who do not want to move their accounts to the downtown branch." She pointed to a glass-walled office in the corner. "That is your office. It is mostly empty, but the desk is still there." Nolan walked into the office and sat down. He looked at the stack of customer files and exit surveys. By lunchtime, he had reviewed the branch's financial history and understood the full picture. The West Branch had not failed on its own. It had been systematically starved by Dominic's regional office. Over the last 18 months, their marketing budget had been cut to zero. Their technology requests had been ignored, and their commercial outreach position had been eliminated. Yet, despite these obstacles, the branch was still serving nearly 300 loyal customers, many of whom were small retail shops, family-owned restaurants, and local contractors who had banked there for decades. Nolan called a meeting in the small break room. The 5 staff members gathered around the laminate table. Sylvia Croft, Preston Cole, the senior loan teller who had worked there for 15 years and knew every customer by name. Fiona Diaz, a young customer service representative who was attending business school at night. Justin Briggs, a dedicated loan officer with deep ties to the local merchant association, and Diana Miller, who handled new accounts with a sharp eye for detail. They looked at Nolan with a mixture of curiosity and exhaustion. They were prepared to hear another corporate speech about transition policies and severance packages. Instead, Nolan opened a local map on the table. "We have 40 days, Nolan said, looking at each of them. "And I have no intention of letting Dominic Thorne close this branch without a fight." The team stared at Nolan in disbelief. Sylvia Croft let out a short, dry laugh, setting her coffee cup down. "Nolan, with all due respect, you do not understand. Dominic has been planning this for over a year. He has redirected all our high-value accounts to the downtown branch and cut our staff. We are just here to turn off the lights." Nolan leaned forward, placing his hand on the map. "I understand completely, but look at this map. What do you see 6 blocks to the east?" Preston Cole squinted at the map. "The River District. It is just an old industrial zone." "It was an industrial zone," Nolan corrected. "But over the last 12 months, the city has transformed those abandoned warehouses into a massive small business incubator. There are currently over 400 tech startups, creative agencies, and artisan manufacturers operating there, with another 200 expected to move in before the end of the year. It is the fastest-growing commercial hub in the region, and our branch is the only financial institution within walking distance." The room fell silent as the team processed the information. Justin Briggs, the loan officer, was the first to speak. "I know the president of the River District Merchant Association. He told me last month that the startups are struggling with the big downtown banks. The large institutions treat them like numbers, charging high fees and refusing to offer flexible credit lines because they lack 3 years of audited financials." "Exactly," Nolan said. Dominic's regional market analysis only looked at high-net-worth residential areas. He completely missed the commercial boom happening right under his nose because he was too busy chasing venture capital firms. "If we can show the executive committee that this branch can capture the River District market, they will not let Dominic close it." "But how do we do that in 40 days? Diana Miller asked, her voice skeptical but curious. "We do not even have a marketing budget. We do it by going directly to the business owners," Nolan explained. "We design tailored financial packages specifically for startups. We offer them flexible merchant services, low-fee business checking, and localized credit decisions. We need to secure 70 signed business account applications before the 40-day deadline. If we bring 70 new commercial clients representing millions of dollars in potential deposits to the executive committee, they will override Dominic's decision." Preston shook his head. "Even if we get the accounts, Dominic will never admit he was wrong. He will find a way to block us." "We are not going to Dominic," Nolan said, a spark of determination in his eyes. "We are going over his head. The executive committee meets on the final Sunday of our 40-day window to approve the regional consolidation plan. Lawrence Wright, the chief financial officer of Summit Trust, is known to be extremely numbers-driven. If we present him with 70 verified commercial accounts and a clear revenue projection, he will see the value. But this has to be kept strictly between us. If Dominic finds out what we are doing, he will terminate all of us immediately." The team looked at each other. For the first time in months, the heavy cloud of defeat seemed to lift from the room. Sylvia looked at Nolan, a small smile appearing on her face. Well, I have 20 years of service at this bank, and I would hate to spend my last month doing nothing but filing exit surveys. Count me in, Preston nodded. I know half the merchants in the area. I can get us meetings, Fiona and Diana agreed, their faces bright with sudden energy. Justin pulled out his notepad and began listing the business owners he knew. By Tuesday morning, the West Branch conference room had been transformed. The dusty training manuals were cleared away, and the walls were covered with maps of the River District, target lists of startups, and daily progress charts. Nolan and Justin worked late into the night, drafting customized commercial offerings. They designed a startup package that bundled low-cost payment processing with a revolving line of credit, backed by the bank's local community fund. It was a package that the downtown branch could never offer because of their rigid corporate guidelines. Meanwhile, Fiona and Diana launched a grassroots outreach campaign. They visited the incubator spaces, introducing themselves not as corporate representatives, but as local bankers who wanted to help the businesses grow. Preston managed the existing clients, offering interest rate incentives for any referrals they brought in. The atmosphere in the branch changed from a quiet morgue to a bustling command center. By the end of the first week, the team had secured 11 new commercial account applications. The strategy was working, but Nolan knew that the real challenge was just beginning. They were operating under the radar, but it would not take long for the regional office to notice the sudden spike in activity at a branch that was supposed to be preparing for liquidation. The second week brought the first sign of Dominic's interference. On Wednesday morning, Nolan received an urgent email from the regional office. Effective immediately, all West Branch staff were required to attend daily closure training seminars at the downtown headquarters. The sessions were scheduled from 2 to 6 in the evening, running for the next 3 weeks. This schedule would effectively shut down the branch's outreach efforts, leaving them with no time to meet with the River District merchants. The team gathered in Nolan's office, panic rising. "He knows," Preston muttered, pacing the floor. "Someone in the regional office must have flagged our account openings. This is his way of locking us down. He does not know the details," Nolan said, analyzing the situation. "If he knew we were targeting the River District, he would have fired me already. He just sees the activity and wants to ensure the closure proceeds without any complications. We need to adapt." Nolan split the team's schedule. Sylvia and Nolan would attend the downtown training sessions, representing the branch and keeping Dominic's attention focused on them. Meanwhile, Preston, Fiona, Diana, and Justin would remain at the branch, claiming that they had to stay on site to handle critical manual transitions for elderly clients who could not use the online systems. To cover their absence, Justin drafted a series of system errors and connectivity issues that they could report to the IIT department, creating a paper trail that justified why they were locked at their desks. The downtown training sessions were grueling. Nolan and Sylvia sat in cold, sterile conference rooms, listening to regional HR managers speak in empty corporate jargon about career transitions and asset liquidation. Dominic made a point of attending the first session, sitting at the back of the room with a smug expression, adjusting to the pace of the West Branch. "Nolan?" Dominic asked during a break, his voice dripping with condescension. "I trust you are finding the work manageable. It is very educational, Dominic," Nolan replied calmly. "We are making sure every client is handled with care." Dominic smirked and walked away, satisfied that his plan was working. But back at the branch, the team was working double shifts. Fiona and Diana spent their mornings in the River District, gathering documentation from startup founders, and their afternoons at the branch, preparing the paper files. On Friday morning, a second obstacle appeared. When Justin tried to submit a commercial loan application for a local software developer, the system blocked the transaction. Nolan checked the system administration portal and discovered that the regional office had reduced the West Branch's loan approval limits to 0 and restricted their daily cash handling capacity. "They are trying to suffocate us," Sylvia said, looking over Nolan's shoulder. "Without loan approvals, we cannot sign these businesses. They need credit lines, not just checking accounts." Nolan picked up the phone. "I have spent 11 years in this region. I know the managers at the other branches. He called Linda, the manager of the North Shore branch, who had also suffered under Dominic's aggressive restructuring. "Linda, I need a favor," Nolan said, keeping his voice quiet. "I have a list of high-quality commercial loan applications from the River District. Our approval limits have been cut to zero. Can we run the underwriting through your branch?" Linda was silent for a moment. "Nolan, if Dominic finds out, he will have my head." "He will not find out," Nolan promised. "We will do all the document preparation and risk analysis here. All your team has to do is input the final approval under your branch code. It counts toward your regional lending targets, and it helps these businesses survive." It was a risky arrangement, but Linda agreed. Over the next week, the West Branch operated as a shadow office. Nolan's team collected the paperwork, did the financial analysis, and courier delivered the physical files to the North Shore branch, where they were processed and approved. By the end of the third week, they had signed 42 business accounts. The team was exhausted, working late into the night at Hazel's Cafe, a local diner owned by Hazel Jenkins. Hazel had cleared out her back room, setting up temporary tables and internet access for the team so they could work away from the branch's monitored network. She kept them supplied with hot coffee and homemade pastries, refusing to take a single dollar for her help. "Your branch saved my husband's business 20 years ago when the big banks wanted to foreclose," Hazel told Nolan as she set down a fresh tray of coffee. "We do not forget who stood by us. Use this room for as long as you need to fight those executives." With 42 accounts secured, the target of 70 was within reach. But Dominic was about to deliver a blow that would threaten to destroy everything they had built. On Friday afternoon of the fourth week, a formal courier arrived at the West Branch, delivering a signed directive from Dominic Thorne. The closure timeline had been accelerated. The West Branch was ordered to cease all public operations by the following Monday morning. The staff layoffs would be processed on Tuesday, and a physical inventory of the branch's assets was scheduled for Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. Nolan's presence was required to oversee the liquidation team. They had just lost their final 2 weeks. The 40-day window had collapsed into a mere 72 hours, and they were still 28 accounts short of their 70-account target. The news hit the break room like a physical blow. Preston sat with his head in his hands, while Diana quietly wiped away a tear. "He shut us down," Preston said, his voice flat with despair. "We were so close. But we cannot sign 28 businesses in 3 days, not with our systems scheduled to be shut off on Monday." Nolan stood at the window, looking out at the rain-soaked strip mall. The anger in his chest had hardened into a cold, sharp focus. He turned to the team. "He has not won," Nolan said. "He has just given us our deadline. The executive committee is holding their quarterly review meeting at the downtown headquarters this Sunday evening at 6 o'clock to finalize the consolidation plans. If we only have until Sunday, then Sunday is when we present our case." "But how?" Sylvia asked, looking up. "The security team will not even let us into the building. We are scheduled for termination. They will let us in if we have the chief financial officer on our side," Nolan replied. "I have spent the last week researching the members of the executive committee. Lawrence Wright, the chief financial officer, is a strict pragmatist. He has publicly criticized the regional offices for failing to capture the small business market. More importantly, I discovered that his nephew, Owen Pemberton, recently founded a software development startup in the River District called Apex Systems." Nolan looked at Justin. "Justin, did we not review an application from Apex Systems last week?" Justin scrambled through his notes. "Yes, we did. They were struggling with high merchant processing fees from a national competitor. I designed a customized payment gateway solution for them that would save them $30,000 a year, but we had to route the approval through the North Shore branch." "Get Owen Pemberton on the phone," Nolan ordered. "I need him to arrange a meeting with his uncle." On Saturday morning, Nolan arrived at the Hillcrest Country Club, where Lawrence Wright played golf every weekend. Thanks to Owen's introduction, Lawrence had agreed to meet Nolan for 15 minutes on the clubhouse terrace before his tea time. The morning air was cool, and the manicured greens of the golf course were a stark contrast to the faded asphalt of the West Branch strip mall. Lawrence Wright, a tall man with silver hair and a stern expression, sat at a corner table, reading a financial report. He looked up as Nolan approached. "Mr. Fletcher," Lawrence said, gesturing to the seat opposite him. "My nephew Owen speaks highly of you. He tells me your branch saved his company $30,000 in processing fees. But I must be frank. The West Branch is scheduled for closure. The regional reports indicate that the location is unprofitable and that there is no commercial demand in that area." Nolan sat down and opened his leather portfolio, sliding a set of charts across the table. "Those regional reports were prepared by Dominic Thorne, Mr. Wright. They are based on outdated market data that completely ignored the River District redevelopment. Over the last 3 weeks, operating with zero marketing budget and restricted system access, my team has secured 70 signed business accounts from the River District." Lawrence's eyes narrowed as he looked at the charts. 70 commercial accounts? In 3 weeks? "Yes, sir," Nolan said, "and that represents over $3 million in projected deposits and commercial lending revenue for the first year alone." Dominic Thorne suppressed the market analysis because he wanted to justify the closure of the branch and shift the existing high-value assets to his downtown office to boost his personal performance metrics. When we began securing these accounts, he actively sabotaged our operations by cutting our loan approval limits, disconnecting our systems, and finally accelerating the closure date to this Monday to prevent us from presenting our findings to the board. Lawrence studied the documents in silence, his expression unreadable. He turned the pages, reviewing the signed applications and the revenue projections. "This is a compelling case, Mr. Fletcher," Lawrence said slowly. "But these are just applications. I cannot stop a board-approved consolidation plan based on projections. I need verified proof of these accounts, and I need to know that these businesses are committed to Summit Trust." "We will give you that proof, Mr. Fletcher," Nolan replied. "Tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, the River District Merchant Association is hosting a public meeting to announce the new economic development project. The mayor will be there along with the business owners we have signed. I invite you and the executive committee to attend. See the market for yourself." Lawrence closed the portfolio and stood up. "I make no promises, Nolan, but if what you are saying is true, I will be there." The final 24 hours were a blur of adrenaline and exhausting labor. Working out of the back room at Hazel's Cafe, the team compiled the final documentation. Diana organized the physical signatures, while Fiona formatted 23 video testimonials from the startup founders. Preston and Justin compiled a detailed legal dossier outlining Dominic's violations of federal and state laws. Specifically, they documented that Dominic had violated the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act under Title 29, United States Code, Section 2101, by failing to provide the mandatory 60 days written notice of a mass layoff to the branch employees. Additionally, they compiled evidence that Dominic had committed a clear breach of fiduciary duty by deliberately suppressing the River District market analysis to inflate his own regional performance metrics. Finally, they documented instances of financial elder abuse under state welfare statutes, showing that the regional office had coerced elderly clients into signing digital transition agreements that stripped them of their paper statements and forced them to pay higher service fees. By Sunday afternoon, the documentation was complete. At 2 o'clock, Nolan and his team arrived at the River District Plaza. A large crowd of local business owners, journalists, and residents had gathered. The mayor stood at the podium, announcing a $75 million infrastructure investment in the district. Standing at the edge of the crowd were Lawrence Wright, accompanied by Clara Vance and Dean Sharp, 2 key members of the executive committee. A moment later, Dominic Thorne arrived, his face contorting with anger as he spotted Nolan and the West Branch staff. He marched toward them, his voice low and furious. "What is the meaning of this, Nolan?" Dominic hissed. "You are supposed to be supervising the inventory liquidation at the branch. This insubordination is grounds for immediate termination." Nolan did not flinch. "The inventory is complete, Dominic, and so is our market analysis." At that moment, the president of the Merchant Association took the microphone. "We would like to extend our deepest gratitude to Nolan Fletcher and the dedicated team at the West Branch of Summit Trust," he announced, his voice echoing across the plaza. While the big corporate offices ignored us, Nolan's team stood by our side, securing 70 new business accounts and saving our startups thousands of dollars in fees. They have proved that community banking is still alive and well. The crowd erupted in applause. The business owners turned to look at Nolan's team, cheering and clapping. Dominic stood frozen, his face turning pale as he realized that the CFO and the executive committee members were watching the entire scene. Lawrence Wright stepped forward, walking past Dominic to approach Nolan. He took the legal and financial folders from Nolan's hands. "Let us seize the documentation," Lawrence said. Nolan handed him the folders. Inside Lawrence, the 70 signed business accounts, the verified revenue projections, and the evidence of Dominic's system sabotage. He also reviewed the legal dossier, detailing the violations of the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act under Title 29, United States Code, Section 2101, the breach of fiduciary duty, and the elder financial abuse. Lawrence's expression hardened as he turned to Dominic Thorne. "My office will be conducting a full forensic audit of your regional transactions starting tomorrow morning," Lawrence said, his voice cold as ice. "Effective immediately. You are suspended from all duties pending the outcome of the investigation." Dominic stammered, trying to find words. "Mr. Wright, this is a misunderstanding. These employees have gone rogue. They have violated corporate protocols. They saved a $3 million market that you tried to bury," Lawrence replied. "I think the board will find your actions very difficult to explain. Security will escort you from the headquarters tomorrow." The board meeting that Sunday evening was a swift execution. Armed with Nolan's documentation, Lawrence Wright presented the River District findings to the executive committee. The evidence of Dominic's deliberate system shutdowns, his failure to provide the legally required notice under the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act, and his manipulation of performance metrics left the board with no choice. Proceeding with the closure under these conditions would have exposed the bank to massive class action lawsuits and federal labor penalties. The board voted unanimously to cancel the closure of the West Branch. They authorized its relocation to a permanent, state-of-the-art facility inside the River District. On Monday morning, Nolan received a call from Lawrence Wright. "We want you back, Nolan, and we want your team. We are establishing a new regional development division, and we want you to run it from the new River District office." Nolan smiled, feeling the immense weight of the last 40 days lift from his shoulders. "I will accept, Mr. Wright," he said, "on one condition. My team comes with me, with full promotions and salary adjustments." Lawrence did not hesitate. Done the next morning, the team gathered at Hazel's Cafe for breakfast. They watched the local news report announce the expansion of the River District branch and the sudden departure of Dominic Thorne. Preston raised his coffee cup. "To the branch that refused to die," he said, "and to the team that saved it," Sylvia added, clinking her cup against Preston's. Nolan looked around at the smiling faces of his colleagues. They had started as a group of condemned employees in a dusty, forgotten office. In 40 days, they had saved their jobs, exposed a corrupt executive, and built a legacy of integrity and community banking that would endure for years to come. Sometimes, the best revenge is not about anger. It is about proving the skeptics wrong and building something that lasts. They had built something that would last. And for Nolan Fletcher, that was the greatest victory of all.